I stood outside the window of a restaurant I wasn't allowed to walk into anymore, watching my own family eat dinner without me. My daughter was laughing at something her grandmother said. My wife was pouring wine like it was any normal Sunday. And across from her, in the seat that should have been mine, sat a man I hadn't seen in 11 years. 3 hours earlier, Danielle told me our Father's Day reservation had been canceled. She said it with a straight face. She said it like she'd rehearsed it. I believed her. That was my first mistake. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss where this goes. And drop a comment down below. Tell me which city or country you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to that morning, before I knew any of this was coming. My name is Ryan Calloway. I'm 52 years old, and for 26 of those years, I've climbed into attics and crawled under houses across Asheville, North Carolina, fixing furnaces and air conditioners for people who never remember my name, but always remember when their house gets too cold in January. I run a small crew now, 4 guys under me, a company truck with my name stitched crooked on the chest pocket, and enough calluses on my hands to tell you exactly how I've spent my life. I wasn't always the kind of man who thought much about Father's Day. My own father left when I was 9, and for a long time I told myself that didn't shape me. It did. It shaped every single decision I made about the kind of father I wanted to be. The kind who shows up, who doesn't cancel, who sits in the 3rd row at the school play even when his knees ache from a 12-hour shift. I have a son from my first marriage, Adam, 31 now, living in Charlotte with a family of his own. We talk on Sundays. I like to think I did right by him, even through the mess of a divorce that taught me more about patience than anything else in my life. Danielle came later. I was 43 when I met her, working a service call at her sister's place, and I remember thinking a woman like that wouldn't look twice at a man who smelled like refrigerant and drywall dust. She looked twice. 9 years, 2 kids, and 1 mortgage later, here we are. Mia is 8, sharp as a tack, already correcting my grammar at the dinner table. Noah is 5, still young enough to think I hang the moon, still young enough to run to the door when my truck pulls into the driveway. I built them a treehouse last summer, with my own 2 hands, because that's the kind of father I decided to be a long time ago, the kind who builds things instead of promising them. Father's Day, to me, isn't really about the tie or the card with the bad joke printed inside. It's proof. Proof that after everything, after my own father's empty chair at every birthday I ever had, I broke the pattern. I stayed. I showed up. So when Danielle told me our reservation at the Birchwood was canceled that morning, I didn't think twice about it. Not because I'm naive, because in 9 years, my wife had never once given me a reason to doubt her. That Sunday, though, was about to change everything I thought I understood about my own family, and about the woman I trusted more than anyone else on earth. The morning started the way most Sundays did. Noah jumped on the bed at 7:15 with a card he'd made out of construction paper, the word Dad, spelled with 1 backward D. Mia handed me a mug of coffee she'd definitely let cool too long, trying to carry it carefully down the stairs. Danielle kissed my cheek and told me to put on the blue shirt, the one she liked, because we had a 7 o'clock reservation at the Birchwood. I'd been looking forward to that reservation for 2 weeks. It wasn't some fancy tradition, just a nice steakhouse downtown, with good lighting and a patio that overlooked the river. Danielle had booked it back in May. I remembered because she'd made a joke about finally using the good table, the corner one, the one you had to request 3 weeks out. By 2 in the afternoon, everything felt normal. I mowed the lawn. Noah helped by riding his bike in circles around me. Around 4, Danielle came outside holding her phone, her face doing something I didn't have a name for yet, something between apologetic and rehearsed. So, bad news, she said. The Birchwood called. Some pipe burst in the kitchen. They're closed for the night. I remember wiping my hands on my jeans and asking if we should try somewhere else. I already tried, she said quickly, too quickly, looking back. Everywhere decent is booked solid for Father's Day. I'm sorry, babe. We'll do something next weekend, okay? Then she said the part that, at the time, felt like a kindness. Actually, my mom offered to take the kids for a few hours tonight, give you some peace and quiet. You've been working so hard. Just relax. Watch the game. I'll pick up something for dinner. I didn't argue. 26 years of physical work teaches you to appreciate an evening on the couch, and honestly, a quiet Father's Day sounded kind of nice. Danielle kissed me again, longer this time, and loaded the kids into the car around 5:30. Mia was wearing her good dress, the one with the little sunflowers. I remember thinking that was a strange choice for an evening at Grandma's house doing nothing. I didn't think about it again until almost 7, when Dale called me, laughing about something on the TV, and asked what I was doing for dinner. Nothing, I told him. Reservation got canceled. Might just order a pizza. There was a pause on the line. A pause that, now I understand completely. Huh, Dale said. That's weird. I just drove past the Birchwood 20 minutes ago. Parking lot's packed. I laughed it off at first. Told Dale he probably had the wrong place, that there were 2 restaurants downtown with similar names, that maybe they'd reopen faster than expected. Dale, being Dale, didn't let it go. Ryan, I've been eating at the Birchwood since before you married into that family. I know what it looks like. Parking lot's full, valet's running. That place isn't closed. I told him I'd call and check. I didn't, not right away. Some part of me, the part that had built a treehouse with his own hands and never once thought twice about his wife, wanted to protect the version of the evening I already believed in. So I sat on the couch a while longer, phone in my lap, telling myself there was probably a simple explanation. Simple explanations, though, have a way of falling apart the more you poke at them. Around 7:30, I texted Danielle, "Hey, everything okay?" Dale said the Birchwood looked open when he drove by. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Almost 2 full minutes passed before her reply came through. Weird. Maybe they got it fixed faster than they said. We're just at my mom's. Kids are having pizza. Don't worry about it. Pizza. But Mia had left the house in her sunflower dress, hair braided the way Danielle only did it for special occasions, the same braid she'd done for Mia's dance recital in April. You don't braid a little girl's hair like that for pizza night at Grandma's. I sat with that thought for a long time. 26 years of marriage teaches you that suspicion. Once it takes root, doesn't ask permission before it grows. I thought about Carol, Danielle's mother, and the way she'd never quite looked at me the same way she looked at Danielle's college boyfriend, a man named Grant, whose name still came up at family dinners, more often than any current son-in-law should be comfortable with. Old money. A lake house. A father who'd sat on the same club board as Carol's husband for 30 years. I'd heard the comparisons before, always wrapped in a compliment that wasn't really a compliment. Grant would have loved this wine. Grant always knew how to dress for these things. I told myself I was being paranoid. 52 years old and jealous of a name I hadn't heard out loud in almost a decade. It felt beneath me. But paranoia, when it's wrong, usually dies quickly. This one didn't. It sat in my chest and got heavier. I called Danielle's phone at 8. It rang twice and went to voicemail. That had never happened before. Not once in 9 years had my wife sent my call to voicemail on purpose. I told myself the ringer was probably off, that she was probably mid-conversation with her mother, that there were 100 harmless reasons. I got in my truck at 8:15. I told myself I was just going to drive past, just to see, just to put my own mind at ease so I could come home and stop feeling like a fool for doubting the woman I loved. The drive downtown took 11 minutes. I know, because I counted every single one of them, watching the street lights change, feeling something in my stomach tighten with every mile. Dale had texted me twice more. "Did you call her back? You good?" And I hadn't answered either message, because I honestly didn't know what I was driving toward. The Birchwood sign came into view first, lit up gold against the evening sky, exactly the way it always looked on a Sunday evening. No caution tape. No handwritten "closed for repairs" sign taped to the door. Just valets in black vests jogging between cars, and through the tall front windows, warm yellow light spilling out onto the sidewalk, and shapes moving inside. People, families, laughter I couldn't hear yet but could already imagine. I parked across the street, cut the engine, and sat there for almost a full minute before I made myself get out of the truck. The walk from my truck to the front window of the Birchwood was maybe 40 feet. It felt longer than any distance I'd covered in 26 years of climbing ladders and crawling through attic spaces. My boots felt heavier with every step, like my body already knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. I didn't go through the front door. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me wasn't ready to be seen yet, wasn't ready to turn whatever this was into something that couldn't be taken back. So I moved along the side of the building instead, past the patio railing, toward the corner window, toward the good table, the one Danielle had booked back in May, the one you had to request 3 weeks out. And there they were. Danielle, in the green dress I'd told her that morning, looked beautiful on her. Mia, sunflower dress and all, swinging her legs under the table the way she did when she was happy. Noah, cheeks full of what looked like garlic bread, laughing at something. Carol sat at the head of the table, like she always did, like she owned whatever room she walked into. And across from my wife, in the seat that should have been mine, sat a man in a gray blazer I didn't recognize by face, but recognized instantly by everything else. The easy way he leaned back in his chair, the watch on his wrist that cost more than my truck, the way Carol kept glancing at him like he was the guest of honor at a party I hadn't been invited to. Grant. I hadn't seen him in 11 years, not since a wedding photo Danielle once showed me from her cousin's ceremony, back before we'd even met. But I knew. The way Carol laughed at something he said, too loud, too delighted, told me everything I needed to know about who this dinner had actually been arranged for. I stood there long enough that my legs started to ache, long enough for a waitress to walk past me twice, without noticing I wasn't a customer waiting for a table. I watched Danielle top off her wine glass. I watched Mia lean over and whisper something to Grant, and I watched him laugh and ruffle her hair, my daughter's hair, like he had any right to. Something in my chest went very quiet. Not loud, not angry, quiet. The kind of quiet that scares you more than yelling ever could. I might have stood there another 5 minutes if a voice hadn't interrupted me. "Sir, are you waiting for someone?" I turned and found a woman in a black birchwood polo, mid-30s, name tag reading Teresa, manager, studying me with the kind of polite concern people reserve for men standing alone outside restaurant windows on a Sunday night. "I was told this place was closed tonight," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Pipe burst in the kitchen. Teresa's eyebrows pulled together. "Closed? No, sir. We've been full since 5. Actually," she glanced past me toward the window, toward the table I'd been watching. "That party back there requested we hold their corner table for weeks. VIP reservation." The tall gentleman even called ahead about the wine list. The tall gentleman. Not me. Never me. "Do you know his name?" I asked, and I don't know why I needed to hear it out loud, from a stranger. Like confirmation mattered more coming from someone who had no idea what she was confirming. Teresa hesitated, unsure why a man outside a window was asking her to name her own customers, but something in my face must have told her this wasn't a small question. "I believe it was under Whitfield," she said carefully. "Mrs. Whitfield made the booking, back in May. Not Danielle's booking, Carol's." I stood on that sidewalk, with the truth arranging itself in front of me, piece by piece, and for the first time since I'd married Danielle Whitfield 9 years ago, I genuinely didn't know what my own family looked like anymore. I thanked Teresa and told her I was fine, that I must have the wrong information, and she gave me a look that said she didn't quite believe me, but wasn't paid enough to push it further. She walked back inside, and I stood there a moment longer, replaying her words. Mrs. Whitfield made the booking, back in May. Danielle had told me she booked that table. She'd made the joke about the corner spot, about finally using the good table. I remembered it clearly because I remembered feeling proud of her for planning ahead, for caring enough to reserve the best seat in the house for me. Except it was never for me. It was Carol's reservation from the start. I thought about the timeline. Carol had been dropping Grant's name into conversation for months, a chance run-in at the farmer's market in March, a mention that he'd moved back to Asheville in April, a comment at Easter dinner about how well he'd done for himself, how he still asked about Danielle sometimes. I'd brushed all of it off as harmless nostalgia. An old woman missing the son-in-law she used to imagine for her daughter. I never once considered that Carol might be quietly building toward something, arranging it, setting a table. And Danielle had gone along with it. That was the part that sat heaviest. Not Grant, not even Carol, though I'd never trusted her warmth, the way Danielle always insisted I should. It was Danielle, my wife, the woman who braided our daughter's hair and kissed me twice before she left the house, looking me in the eye that morning and telling me a lie she'd clearly rehearsed enough times to make it sound effortless. I thought about Mia leaning toward Grant, whispering something that made him laugh. 8 years old, no idea what she was part of, no idea that her mother had dressed her up and driven her downtown to sit across from a man her father had never even been told existed in any real way. I thought about Noah's garlic bread and his easy laughter, blissfully unaware that his father was standing 40 feet away on a sidewalk, watching his own family celebrate a holiday that was supposed to be his. I didn't go inside. I want to be honest about that, because it would have been easy to. It would have been easy to storm through that door and flip the good table Carol had reserved back in May, to make a scene loud enough that everyone in that restaurant would remember my face. Some part of me, the part shaped by a father who left when I was 9 and taught me nothing except what kind of man I refused to become. Wanted exactly that. But I've spent 52 years learning the difference between a reaction and a decision. My own father reacted his way out of our lives. I wasn't about to let anger make a decision for me that I couldn't take back. So I got back in my truck. I sat there in the dark parking lot across the street, hands on the wheel, engine off, watching the warm gold light of that restaurant window and the family inside it that no longer felt entirely mine. He didn't cry. I didn't call Dale back. I just sat there and let myself understand, fully and completely, that whatever was happening inside that restaurant had been building for months, and that the woman I trusted more than anyone on earth had chosen, at some point, to let it happen without me. I sat in that truck for almost 40 minutes. I want to tell you I spent that time being wise about it, working through my feelings like some kind of textbook example of a level-headed man. I didn't. For the first 10 minutes, I just stared at the restaurant sign, watching it blur and sharpen depending on how tight my jaw was clenched. For the next 10, I thought about calling my son Adam, just to hear a voice that had nothing to do with any of this. I didn't call him either. I didn't want him carrying this before I even understood what this was. Somewhere in the middle of that 40 minutes, I thought about my own father, 9 years old, standing at a window a lot like the one I'd just walked away from, except mine had been the front window of our house, watching for a truck that never came back. I remembered the specific, hollow feeling of learning that a person you loved had quietly decided you weren't necessary anymore. Nobody had ever explained it to me. Nobody had ever sat me down and said, "Your father isn't coming back, and here's why." I just learned it, piece by piece, from silence. I was not going to do that to Mia and Noah. Whatever was happening, whatever Carol had built, whatever Danielle had allowed, I was not going to let my children learn about broken trust the way I had. Through silence, through absence, through a slowly closing door nobody bothered to explain. But I also wasn't going to let this go unspoken. 26 years of physical labor teaches you that some problems fix themselves if you leave them alone, and some problems get worse every single day you don't touch them. This was the second kind. I thought about walking back in. I thought about it seriously. Not to make a scene, but to simply sit down at that table, uninvited, and ask Carol directly why she'd spent months quietly building toward a dinner that didn't include me. I thought about looking Gran in the eye and asking him exactly what he thought he was doing at a table with another man's children. But I kept coming back to one image, Mia's face. 8 years old, leaning across a table, laughing at a joke, completely unaware she was standing in the middle of something ugly. If I walked in angry, if I turned that restaurant into a scene, the memory she'd carry wouldn't be about her mother's mistake or her grandmother's manipulation. It would be about her father losing control in public. Children remember the explosion. They rarely remember the reason for it. So I made a decision, right there in that dark truck, with my hands finally steady on the wheel. I wasn't going to confront this in anger, and I wasn't going to confront it in that parking lot. I was going to go home. I was going to wait, and when the truth came out, because it always does, eventually, one way or another, I was going to make sure it came out on my terms, calmly, completely, and in a way my children would never have to be ashamed of remembering. I started the truck and drove home in silence, already knowing that the version of my family I'd believed in that morning didn't exist anymore. What came next would decide what replaced it. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard the garage door open just after 9:30. I'd showered, changed out of the clothes I'd worn to stand outside that window, and made myself a cup of coffee I never drank. I wanted to look like a man who'd spent a quiet evening at home, because I hadn't decided yet how much I was ready to say, and I needed the next few minutes to belong to me, not to my anger. Noah came through the door first, sleepy-eyed, already half out of his shoes. "Dad!" Grandma's friend gave me extra garlic bread, and I ate all of it. He held up his hands like that was proof of something important. "That's my boy," I said, and my voice came out normal, steadier than I expected. Mia followed behind, still in her sunflower dress, hair coming loose from the braid. She climbed into the chair next to me, the way she always did when she had something on her mind, and rested her chin on her hands. "Dad, why weren't you at dinner?" she asked. Not accusing, just curious, in the plain, unfiltered way only an 8-year-old can manage. "Mom said you were busy, but Grandma's friend said it was your favorite restaurant too." I felt Danielle freeze in the doorway behind her, keys still in her hand. "Did he?" I said carefully, keeping my eyes on Mia. What else did Grandma's friends say? Mia shrugged, already losing interest, the way kids do when a question doesn't feel important to them. He said he used to know Mom a long time ago, before you. He said maybe he'd come to my birthday party too. I looked up then, past Mia's shoulder, straight at Danielle. She stood frozen in the doorway, the color gone from her face, keys still hanging from her fingers, like she'd forgotten what they were for. Mia, sweetheart, Danielle said, voice tight. Why don't you go get ready for bed? I'll come tuck you in. Mia, sensing something in the air that 8-year-olds are usually smart enough to sense, slid off the chair without argument and headed for the stairs, Noah trailing behind her, still talking about garlic bread. The house went quiet. Danielle set her keys down on the counter, like they suddenly weighed too much. Ryan, the Birchwood wasn't closed tonight, I said. I kept my voice level, because I'd promised myself in that truck I wouldn't let this become the kind of memory my children would carry the wrong way. No burst pipe, no emergency closure. I stood outside that window for almost an hour, Danielle. I watched all of you. I watched Grant. She didn't argue. She didn't ask how I knew, or try to explain it away with some smaller lie built on top of the first one. She just sat down slowly at the table across from me, the same table where, 9 years ago, I'd first told her I wanted to build a life with her. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, she said quietly. It wasn't supposed to happen at all. Then tell me how it was supposed to happen, I said. Because from where I was standing, it looked pretty intentional. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands, and I recognized something in her face I hadn't let myself consider until right then. Not guilt over betrayal, but guilt over how long she'd let something get away from her, without ever having the courage to stop it. It's my mother, she finally said. It's been my mother this whole time. Start from the beginning, I said. All of it. Danielle wrapped both hands around a coffee mug that had gone cold an hour ago, like she needed something to hold on to. You know how she's always been about you. Not cruel exactly, just never satisfied. Every year it's something. You didn't go to the right college. You work with your hands. You don't talk about stocks at dinner. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Grant moved back to Asheville in April. My mother ran into him at the country club, and it was like something switched on in her. She started calling me twice a day, bringing him up constantly, telling me it wasn't too late to fix things. Fix what things? I said. We're married. We have 2 kids. I told her that. I told her 100 times. Danielle's voice cracked slightly, but she kept pushing. She said she just wanted us to catch up. As old friends, no big deal. She's the one who called the Birchwood back in May and put down the deposit under her name. I didn't even know until 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, I repeated. You knew for 3 weeks, and you let me believe we had a reservation. I told her no, Ryan, multiple times, but this morning she called and said Grant was already in town, already expecting us, and she made it sound like backing out at the last minute would be humiliating for everyone, and She stopped, swallowed. I panicked. I told myself I'd go for an hour, be polite, and get the kids home before you even noticed anything was different. I told myself it was easier to manage her for one night than to have the fight I should have had with her months ago. So you lied to my face instead. Yes. She didn't flinch from the word, and I've regretted it since the second I said it. I sat with that for a while. 26 years of fixing things for a living teaches you that most repairs fail not because of one broken part, but because someone kept patching around the real problem instead of replacing it. Danielle hadn't lied to hurt me. She'd lied because she'd spent years avoiding a confrontation with her own mother, and I'd become collateral damage in a fight that was never really about me. That didn't make it forgivable on its own, but it made it understandable enough for me to know exactly what needed to happen next. I'm not interested in fighting with Carol over the phone, I said, and I'm not interested in pretending tonight didn't happen. Tomorrow, you're going to call your mother, and we are going to sit down with her together, not to yell, to be clear, about what our family looks like, and who gets to decide that. Danielle nodded, eyes wet. And Grant? Grant doesn't matter, I said, and meant it. He's not the one who made a promise to me 9 years ago. You are. The next afternoon, Carol arrived expecting a quiet apology visit, and instead found both of us waiting at the same kitchen table. I didn't raise my voice once. I simply laid out, plainly, what I'd seen through that window, what Teresa had told me, and what I expected going forward. Full honesty. No more arranged dinners, no more quiet campaigns to write me out of my own family's story. Carol's composure cracked somewhere around the third sentence, and for the first time in 9 years, I watched her run out of things to say. Carol sat very still for a long moment, her hands folded on the table the way they always were when she wanted to look composed. But her eyes gave her away. She hadn't expected me to be calm. I think, in some corner of her mind, she'd been waiting for me to lose my temper, waiting for the version of the confrontation that would let her paint me as the unreasonable one. I wasn't going to give her that. "I've never told you I hated you," I said. "I've never once given you a reason to think I wasn't good for your daughter or your grandchildren. But you spent months planning an evening designed to remind everyone at that table that I wasn't the man you wanted for her. And you used my own kids to do it." "That's not," Carol started, but her voice didn't have its usual certainty behind it. "Mia asked me last night why I wasn't at dinner," I said. "She's 8. She shouldn't have to ask that question." Carol looked at Danielle, maybe hoping for backup, some old habit of her daughter smoothing things over on her behalf. Danielle didn't offer it. For the first time in longer than I think either of us realized, Danielle sat up straighter and looked her mother directly in the eye. "Mom, I let this go on because I didn't want to fight with you," Danielle said. "That's over. Ryan is my husband. He's Mia and Noah's father. If you can't be part of this family on those terms, you don't get to be part of it at all." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard all week. Carol didn't apologize the way people do in movies, with tears and dramatic declarations. She wasn't built for that. But something in her posture changed, the fight draining slowly out of a woman who'd expected to win a battle nobody else had agreed to fight. She said quietly that she hadn't meant to make me feel unwelcome in my own family. It wasn't a full apology. It was close enough to be a start. I didn't need to hear from Grant. I never called him, never confronted him, never gave him another thought worth mentioning here. Men like that only have power in a room you allow them into. I simply stopped allowing it. What I got, in the end, wasn't revenge. It wasn't some dramatic victory with raised voices and slammed doors. What I got was quieter, and honestly, worth more. My wife choosing me, out loud, in front of the one person who'd spent years suggesting she shouldn't have. My children, safe from ever having to understand what almost happened. And a boundary, finally drawn, in a family that had needed one for longer than I'd realized. The following Sunday, we went back to the Birchwood. My idea, this time. I wanted the place to mean something different before too much time passed. We got the corner table, the real reservation, under my name. Mia wore the sunflower dress again, but this time she spent the whole dinner narrating her chicken tenders like a cooking show host, making Noah laugh so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Danielle reached over at one point and laced her fingers through mine under the table, not saying anything, just holding on. Carol wasn't there. We weren't punishing her. Danielle had made it clear the door wasn't permanently closed, only that it now had a lock, and she'd have to earn the key back slowly, on our terms. For the first time in longer than I could remember, that felt like enough. I used to think being a good father meant never leaving. I know now it means something a little bigger than that. It means staying even when staying is hard. It means being calm when you have every right not to be. It means teaching your kids, without ever saying it out loud, that love doesn't disappear the moment it gets complicated. That Father's Day didn't go the way anyone planned. But somewhere between that restaurant window and that kitchen table, I finally understood exactly what kind of father and what kind of husband I'd chosen to be all along.